Belly, the presenter, is really, you can tell he's really, really passionate about what he's doing, and just his willingness to want to share his knowledge and even sharing his templates and things like that we've gone through in the session. I think that's going to be really useful to be able to look at that stuff later as well. So yeah, I think it's been really good. Really enjoyed it so far.
Documentation. So, what are you going to use? What are you going to have? So we were talking about, ideally, the installers are getting a A3 laminated folder with all the drawings and all the schedules, and best laid plans of mice and men you'll still have to modify because someone has put HVAC on your roof. And earlier on today I said these projects take a long time, and you might sign on January the 1st and work might start on August the 1st. And by the way, the air conditioning people have stuck something on the roof and they've stuffed up your design. But at least have some documentation. So, cutting schedules, panel and string layout, cable tray and cable tray layout, conduit schedules, right? Interface protection, where the installers go, DC and AC isolator schedule if applicable. Now, if you're within 3 metres of the board, you don't have to use an AC isolator. You can get away with just using a breaker in, say, the interface protection, no AC isolator. That's a bit of a change there. MCCB and MCB schedule, well, in fact, there will be no MCBs on this job because you will not be using a miniature circuit breaker. You'll be using, at the very least, molded case circuit breaker, in most cases with the main switch, a motorised circuit breaker. And we will talk about air breakers as well. This kind of stuff is what you have to think about, and it all comes down to, if you do it, there's less mistakes are made, less micromanaging, because everyone knows what they're doing. I'll jump ahead a little bit. Allow $100,000 for hidden costs for these jobs. And that includes roof structural engineering report, protection study if required, the grid application, and the grid safe interface protection board. But we'll go into the details a bit more. That'll cover everything, right? In most cases, probably 20 grand over, but that's a general rule of thumb on this kind of thing. So 27 panels per pallet. There's 83 pallets all up, and each pallet in this case weighs 680 kilo. Right. Now, as we said, there's other methods. We don't have to truck them up full, and that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. So straight away if you're lifting that amount, maybe GamCorp or whoever's going to charge you a little bit more, and maybe that cuts out 20% of the roofs that would support a sub 700 kilo pallet, because remember, these new roofs are designed so fine tolerance wise, and again, they're not designed to have anything on top of them. So take that into consideration. Oh yeah, I've organised a crane, I've gone through the checklist, and it can, but I haven't done the roof structural engineering report, because I reckon last time on a similar roof, we got those 700 kilo pallets up there. Let's go for it, let's take a risk. No, don't do that. We're gonna double team on the AC side. So we're gonna look at cables, we're gonna look at cable tray, we're gonna look at the sizing of breakers, we're gonna look at AS3008, how we do that. We're talking about network application costs, grid protection costs, and the testing of the grid protection costs. In other words, the interface protection costs. So
I'll give the overview of what the cost will involve. So with the network application side, first it would be the cost which will be charged by the distributor, as well as if you are doing the application by yourself, there are lots of documents which you require to submit to the distributor. So you might want to count those costs as well, like how much time you will take to prepare those documents to submit it to the distributor. And also it would be like what would be the cost after the installation you get the pre-approval. After that pre-approval, what would be the cost involved to submit all the documents to the distributor as well as the energy retailer. So you want to include all those costs and time spent by yourself on doing those things. Then it would be the network protection board now, which is called as interface protection. So you want to go through how much it would cost you for the interface protection, and you want to include the time to manage that interface protection board, what are the steps, how you'll get those pricing and everything. We'll go through that part in detail. And also, like, some of the distributor will require the post-installation testing as well as power quality testing required in their post-installation submission. So you want to include that part as well.
Okay, so we're on to this section of when do we need it, and we've got a nice little like a flow chart. It simply allows you to go, well, when do I need it? So first question, is the system size greater than kVA? It is. Okay, then you'll need a grid-safe interface protection. If no, then the next question is, are the number of inverters greater or equal to 2, or equal to 2 or greater? And or is there any other kind of metering or other requirements? If yes, then you'll need a grid safe, because you'll still need an enclosure that's certified type tested. So that's the thing. People think because they don't need a relay, they don't need the enclosure. The enclosure still has to be type tested and certified to take into consideration the heat generation from the circuit protection and all the other equipment inside. You can't just make you used to be able to in the good old days, or the bad old days, but you can't do that. And if you get caught, well, it's up to you. And I've never really met people who do that now. Everyone just goes, hey, this is what we do. So, as Josh mentioned before, the DNSP may still require a relay in some situations, but good old AusNet, at this point in time, they still require a full grid-safe interface protection.
If we're installing another DB for the solar distribution, is that effectively what that first question is getting at? Because if we're just coming out of the main switchboard,
yeah,
then there is no
grid safe board. But I think if you are doing more than 2 connections, then I think you might need a combiner box or similar to grid safe or something to tie it up into a single connection.
I know what, see, if you've got one inverter, right, you've only got your main switch is your inverter switch. But and this is why we asked the question here, is the number of inverters greater or equal to 2? Because you've got a breaker, you've got a 250 dialed down to 200 for your SunGrow 1, and you've got another 250 dialed down to 200 on your inverter number 2, and then you've got the main switch, which takes into consideration in this board here. This was before the change, and we've got one MOCB which has a dual purpose, and we'll explain all that. But it's a good question actually. So if we go to, if the question is no and no, in other words, we don't have a number of inverters is not greater or equal to 2, in other words, it's 1, well then, no grid safe needed. Like, we've had a lot of conversations with customers, installers who go, oh, I've got this cable, I selected this, it's fine. You go, yeah? You haven't gone into the derating, oh yeah, but this, that, and you go, hang on, you got lid there. You know, you got lid and you're against the wall, and suddenly your cable cannot cope with the capacity that's required because it's been derated. It can be a really interesting conversation, especially when they've already committed and they've bought cable. You go, hey, you know, but as long as they can prove the calculations abide by ACE 3008 and they're correct and accurate, all should be good. But the DSPs are looking very closely, especially with these bigger systems, right? All right, so what kind of cable and cable tray do we need? Well, we've sort of selected 110. And this is when you start going into the nitty gritty of the tables here. Now, there's a table 9, column 6. So column 6 here is You're talking about touching, so I've gone touching on this thing. This is where it gets a bit iffy, right, in regards to how the cable is categorised, right? Now I've gone touching in that respect, and it can carry, and I'm looking at solid strand, and here you could go flexible, because you probably would, let's face it, but I'm erring a little bit less conservatively because I've got an extra 10 amps there, 330 amps. And this is where someone who hasn't done the commercial go, oh, well, it can carry heaps. I mean, what's a sun-grey inverter output? About 159, 160 amps, right? And of course, then you have to apply the 1.25 rule, but the reality is that's what it's outputting, right? And that we'll talk about that relationship.
We sort of delved really in depth into the commercial space, learned a lot about the different DNSPs and the way that they react, and also a lot of detail into like the construction management as part of the project. I think we as a business have got a bit to do with the organisation, and I think some of the stuff we learned today will really go a long way in helping that.